Afternoon, welcome back to the channel. After the last video of the Land Rover, it became apparent to me that it wasn't so much a review. There was no driving it, there was no what it's like to live with daily, or anything like that. So I thought I'd try and go for the most straightforward of reviews and review my own car. This is a 2006 330D BMW, which is the E92 age. Practicality wise, it's a 3-door, but it's a very big 3-door. Huge boot, seats that once they go down you can fit Christmas trees in, all the luggage you could ever need. So in that sense it's very practical if there's just two of you, but it will sit 5'4" comfortably. With a pretty heavy foot, you'll get about 35 mpg. Motorway runs sort of 40, low 40s, but pretty respectable. So it's the last of the M57 engines, it's the last iteration, biggest turbo, best tuning I guess really, which is 230 bhp and 370 pounds-foot standard.
Standard!
This particular model is a manual, 6-speed manual, really nice tight gearbox, dual mass flywheel, all that. So it's great to drive. Performance wise, it is not lacking. I think these things do 60 in 6.5 from standard.
Standard!
This has had a stage 1 and a DPF delete, so it's probably pushing a bit more than that power wise. But it's so silky smooth to drive. It feels like a modern car. It doesn't feel like a classic BMW, which is a positive and a negative. I feel like it does lack some character. It maybe lacks that analog driver car interface. I'm sure you would have heard so many car reviewers and journalists talk about that sort of thing. But it is true, it's not the same interface that you'd get from a late 90s BMW. But still, the performance is very engaging. It turns in well. It's quite heavy for a 3-door. I think it's about 15, maybe 1600 kilos. More like 1600 kilos, yeah. But it handles it well. It's got huge brakes on the front. It's an open diff. I think that only changes to the limited slip diff in the M3 version. But this is in some ways quite an underrated model of E92. The 330D is a single turbo. Once you look at anything quicker than that, you're looking at 335i's or 335D's, which are both twin turbo and generally have quite a lot of problems with them. If you're trying to squeeze more power, you come across a lot of problems with, I think, like oil pump issues and PCV valves and that sort of thing. And eventually you'll just need to upgrade to a single turbo. But these just feel like they go on no problem. I don't think you'd want to squeeze too much power out of one of these, but it's pretty reliable, yeah. So this particular model is on 200,000 miles, which is a lot. But mechanically, you would not know. It's been taken care of. You only get a car to 200,000 miles by taking care of it, really. So mechanically, it's pretty sound. I've just put a water pump on it and some other bits, you know, drive shaft couplings, just general rubbers that tend to wear. There's no avoiding that. Cosmetically, you might see the miles a bit more. Sticky door handles, a battered windscreen, stone chips all over the bonnet, grazed headlights, sticky washer. Whichever trim level this is, it's perhaps not the best. It's got a strange combination of grey plastics, black plastics, sort of beige leather, and this walnut trim that's surrounding, and it's a strange combo. I don't really think it works. I've been in other E92s with black leather and black cloth and silver trim, and that it just feels a much nicer place to be. talking of that, the seats are perfectly comfortable. This wouldn't be out of place for someone 6 foot and above driving. It feels like it's got plenty of room for adjustment. Great long doors as well, relative to that. And they're great looking cars. I know that's a matter of opinion, but they are very aggressive looking BMWs, really. So I've had this one knocking on 6 months now, and in terms of standard issues you get for cars, E92s of this age, they've mostly been dealt with. You get iDrive issues from water ingress in the boot. That's quite a pain, but also fairly easy to sort, I believe. Wow, what a fucking mom. There are parts of this car that feel like they've not so much been cheaped out on, but lacking in that quality somewhat. Just the plastics, the way that they feel against your hands, the way that they actually operate, it doesn't feel particularly robust. Saying that, they must have done something right, because they all still work, they all still look good. It's a strange combination, because this age of E92 is the very first gen, so it comes with a lot of the electrical problems and general problems that happen when you release a new model. But since it's the last generation of this engine and drivetrain, that still feels absolutely spot on. So I think with this, it's going to be the auxiliaries and the surrounding technologies that fault long before the engine and driveline does, really. We'll have to see with that one, because I plan on keeping this for quite a long time, hopefully. So what have those miles done to the performance? Well, the steering is still tight and it does feel quite responsive. Perhaps at lower speeds it feels quite vague because of the nature of the the wear that you'll get through that rack and pinion. And you know your car is suitably braked when you can stop at twice the speed you can accelerate, and that's saying something in a car that accelerates quite well. Comparing it to other vehicles on the market of this age and of this performance, I do think it's fantastic value for money. I didn't actually buy this, I swapped it for my E34 for a value of about 2 grand, which if you're talking 2 grand, I don't think you're getting better value than this for that money. I don't think you're getting near 300 bhp reliability in the bucket load and looks like this. I don't think you're finding that very often. Maybe older Audi A4s, maybe the V6 diesel that they do, the 2.7. To find a good one of these of the pre-LCI age, so I think that's 2006 to 2010, maybe 2009, you're looking still at a good 4 or 5 grand if you want a nice condition one. But of course you can pick up the slightly higher mileage ones for a bit less, maybe 2.5, 3. As soon as you go above 330D or 330i, they do command a large premium. The twin turbos and the M3 are, yeah, I mean, the twin turbos are nearer 10 and the M3 is going to be around probably 25. I would go as far as to say that this is the best car I've had. It's easy to drive, but not numb. It's still involving. You switch off the traction control and it is quite an animal, truth be told. It becomes quite a handful, but again, only if you're pushing it. You can drive around with traction control off quite happily all day. You just need to be a bit vigilant. After owning cars that are sub 200 bhp, you do have to get used to this. Plans for the future on this? Not really a great deal, truth be told. I love how it drives as it is. It's a fantastic daily driver. It gets me to work and back every day, and anywhere I need to take it, I'd be very confident jumping in it and taking it up to Scotland and back. So I don't really want to be fitting coilovers or putting some crazy hybrid turbo on it and that sort of thing. I'm happy with how it performs. The iDrive system, when it came out, would have been, I'm sure, quite revolutionary. By this point, 14 years later, it feels pretty basic. You can still use the GPS, but it will be outdated and probably inaccurate. The central puck is quite intuitive, and it does make using the iDrive system, yeah, very, very easy and straightforward. I do think that these are soon to be the next bargain buys, especially in the UK market anyway. E36s are now through the roof for a clean one, really. If you're looking at a coupe and a bigger capacity 2.8, E46s are even starting to jump up as well. Of course, you get your low quality 4-cylinder petrols that you could just weld the diff and do as you please. But I think give it a couple years, and ones that have stood up well to the test of time, I think this will be the buy to have. I expect to see a lot more second-hand ones on the road, probably driven by younger people. The tax is pretty reasonable, and the insurance for myself with 4 years no claims is really pretty good. It's triple figures, so I can't complain. As I said, there is a lack of theatre in some ways with this, and it did take me a bit longer to really connect with the car and understand it a bit more. I did originally feel like it was quite bland apart from the acceleration and the cornering, but I get what it's all about now. I see what they were trying to do with this car, and I like it. I really like it. Plus, at this sort of price, I don't see the value going down really at all. I don't see how late generation M57 with the manual gearbox is really going to drop beneath around £2,000. I don't, despite mileage, that's still quite a sought after combo. You can't get performance for that cheap. Who knows, maybe in a few years time when every car has 700 bhp and an electric motor, maybe 280 odd bhp will feel like nothing. Maybe that's something you'll be able to buy for very little. Hopefully you will see this car in a lot more videos. I think it will be a staple background vehicle for a lot of things that are going on. Planning on plenty of road trips or just general escapades after the UK third lockdown, but that's yet to be seen. I feel like I'd like to see a new side to this car. I'd like to see how it is as a long distance cruiser. When I bought it, I did take it back on the motorway for 2.5 hours, and it was perfectly comfortable. The seats, seats tend to give me back problems quite easily, which is a bummer at this age, but these seats, they're very simple. There's no electronic, bolster support or anything like that. But they do seem to, they still have a lot of adjustment, and you can make them pretty spot on. Memory settings as well on these. But BMW have been doing that since probably the 80s, the E32 Shaper 7 series. So not that impressed by electric memory seats. It would be nice if they were heated as well. That would make a big difference. I would like to do some maintenance to this. I'd like to change the windscreen, give it a good service. That's third gear, 35 to 85. That happens all too easily. Some new wheels, that's what would be nice on this. If I was to make any modification, you could get lowering springs for quite cheap. I'll have to check the condition of my shops, but some CSL wheels, 18-inch CSL wheels, do tend to look cracking on E92s, so that's a consideration, because my wheels are quite beaten up. Tends to happen after this many miles. Visibility, this is one I struggle with a bit. I consider it to be quite restricted. I'm used to my older cars that have got lower dashboards, just less sloped windows and windscreens, and I do find this quite frustrating, especially in the coupe form. The rear window is very small, rear windscreen is pretty sloped and difficult to see out of, and the front windscreen feels like you're a bit hemmed in. For such a large car, they've perhaps not taken the best use of this front area, the dash and the A-pillar. It does make it feel sort of 4x4-esque. Not exactly low to the ground and mean. It makes it feel like a great big bruiser, but BMWs are good for great big bruisers, so can't really say too much about that. I do personally like my cars a bit louder. I like to be able to hear that straight six rumble. That would be nice in this, but diesels being diesels, I feel like it would have to be fully straight piped for you to really hear any difference. You can't exactly do a back box delete and notice a slight change in the engine tone. So I don't really want to commit to that. I don't want to sound like some agricultural spec nonce. That's not very kind, is it? I don't want it to draw that much attention. It would be nice to have a bit more tone. If you're early 20s, you've got a couple grand behind you, probably more like 3 or 4, and you're looking for a way to get a car that's a bit more interesting with some performance, still reliability, still usability, I would say this has got to be right up there in your list. Traction control off. So if you're looking for a 3 Series that's got some performance, you don't want to be a drift boy and you don't want to spend 10 grand on a newer shape. This is a perfectly good balance. It's not quirky and it might not set your fanny on fire, but it will give you a smile. Oh, shit me. Fuck's sake. This fucking cyclist, man, what? Swerving all over the road. I can't think what I'm saying because this knob's about to fall off. This is horrendous.